I used to be 98% effective. It's pretty good for a human, right? At the time, I was working as a designer for a large corporation. Every day I would design print ads and websites for companies all across Canada. And I enjoyed my work. And I was damn good at it too. Not only was I 98% effective at everything that I did, I had a productivity level of 135%. I was the top performer on my team. But it wasn't fair to my coworkers because I had a secret weapon. I had something that nobody knew about, not even me. I had the power of social anxiety. Yes. Despite being excellent at my job, I had a really hard time connecting with other people. I couldn't relate to my coworkers. I felt pretty alone, and so I just buried myself into my work. My whole life I'd been told, oh, I'm just quiet and shy and introverted. And so I thought that was just the life of an introvert. You show up, you stay quiet, you stay out, you get out, and you're done. Pretty easy, right? But that introversion for me turned into something bigger. It turned into fear. And it evolved into anxiety. And here's just a little snippet of what anxiety looks like in the corporate world for me. Anytime I had to make a phone call, if it was to a coworker or a friend or my dentist, it would take me 10 minutes before I could even muster up the courage to pick up the phone. And even before I got to that point, I had to write a script. I would map out entire conversations that might happen to make myself feel comfortable. And I even had a separate script for leaving a voicemail, just in case. And that was the one I longed to use the most, because it meant that I did not have to talk to a human being. So I buried myself, and I buried myself into my work. And I got lost in it. And I worked longer and harder than any person probably in that building, because I wouldn't take breaks. I wouldn't take breaks because I didn't know what to do with myself. I wouldn't be distracted by trivial conversations around the water cooler, because those conversations left me feeling extremely uncomfortable. And so I would sit at my computer all day, work 9 hours straight, go home, and work another 4 to 5 hours on freelance projects. How's that for a distraction from your life, right? Now, because of that work habit, I was called a machine. And I took that as a compliment back then. Machines are strong, infallible. Machines are perfect. And like a machine, I could not and would not feel pain when I was working. Because to me, pain was a sign of weakness. And so when pain started creeping into my dominant arm when I was working one day, I ignored it. I kept ignoring it. And I ignored it to the point where it could not be ignored anymore. And one day I found that from the very tips of my finger all the way into the deepest part of my shoulder blade, my arm was just engulfed in this fiery, throbbing, stabbing, shooting pain all at once. It was unlike anything I'd ever felt before. And I was mortified. I was embarrassed because I had to leave work and go home early. And I could barely drive myself home because my arm was in so much pain and I was crying so much. And later that evening, I ended up going to the emergency room because that pain still hadn't subsided. And I didn't know it back then, but that visit to the emergency room was the start of a 2-year-long journey through medical limbo and my own personal hell. So over the next 2 years, I took countless painkillers, which did absolutely nothing. I had tons of tests performed, and I saw 19 specialists. 19 specialists. I even saw a hand specialist. Did you know that there are humans out there who specialize in nothing but the human hand? It's fascinating. I know this, and he still couldn't help me. In fact, over those 2 years, not a single person could or would diagnose what was physically wrong with me. And all of those tests came back 100% normal. Now, that pain I was feeling was supremely real. It was palpable. It was tremendous and horrifying. But because there is no evidence, my insurance stopped supporting me. And so I got stuck in that state of limbo where I couldn't work and I couldn't take time off. And so even when I tried to go back to work, I ended up just making things worse. And so as a result, I decided, or I didn't decide, but I ended up being in a very, very dark place. I became extremely depressed. Leaving home was so hard, and I couldn't really connect with those people I loved who were closest to me. I would cry all night, sleep all day, felt like human garbage in between. And despite all that, the weirdest thing for me wasn't that isolation, it wasn't that lack of connection, it was that I couldn't understand why when I looked out at those bright blue skies, they somehow looked gray. And that's the thing I remember most from that experience. Now, eventually I did get help, which is good, because that's why I'm standing here today. My depression was taken care of, but I was still a wreck emotionally and physically. And so when my super supportive employer put that severance package in front of me, oh boy, did I leap on it. I had no plan, no clue where I was going. I was still in pain. I was still feeling anxious. But I knew that anywhere I could go was better than where I had been. And so with little financial stability, no real plan, anxiety at an all-time high, that pain still in my arm, I did the logical thing. I started a business. I started a brand consulting business, and the content of that business isn't important. What's important is I designed it around my life rather than the other way around, because I recognized that I needed that time to feel better. There'd be no more 10 to 15 hour days on the computer. There'd be no more machine. But a funny thing happens when you go from full-time employee to full-time business owner. You very quickly and harshly realize that clients, projects, and money don't just fall into your lap. It's funny how that works. And so all of a sudden, the quiet, shy, introverted, anxious woman had to go out and sell to other people. And that was interesting. So on a very cold and windy January day in 2017, I did the single most terrifying thing I've ever done in my life. Something so horrifying, it would send shivers down the spines of introverts everywhere. I went networking. And I sucked at it. It was really hard. I didn't know what to do. I had a hard time connecting, and I actually felt like I was back at that corporate office, having a hard time communicating and really connecting with people. But my time as a machine had taught me that one good thing: to push through that discomfort, master it. And so I went to another networking event, and another one, and another, and another, until one day I found myself standing in front of a stranger, eloquently presenting myself and my business without a script. Who are you? Is what I was thinking. But it was a really magical experience. And over that time of networking and really connecting with humanity, I met some really amazing people who taught me some tremendous things. I met people who helped me acknowledge my anxiety, and I met people who helped me let it go. And I met people who helped me rediscover my confidence and my self-worth. And I met people who taught me that above all, one of the most important skills that we can learn is self-care, regardless of whether you're a business owner, an employee, or just a human being. And I also noticed something interesting was happening over that time. Despite stopping all those tests, all those treatments, and everything in between, my pain was going away. And that's when I realized that the one thing I needed the most was the one thing I'd been avoiding my whole life. And I learned that we need to take care of ourselves. And through embracing the gifts of humanity, amazing things can happen. And so I'm letting go of that pain. I let go of that anxiety. And for the first time in a really long time, I feel genuine joy. I feel present. And I feel like a flippin' human being. And I don't know whether I'm still 98% effective, but I do know that I am 100% cared for. Thank you, everyone.
Caitey Gilchrist, everyone.